Hi, everyone. Welcome to Leisrealtalk. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Someone said that they want to bet the late is a tad late tonight, but no, I'm not. I'm right on time. Um, I'm actually quite prepared. So excited to see you all. All right, we have a very intriguing topic to cover tonight. And I've been spending whole day preparing for it, and we have I have four video clips to show you. So it's quite interesting. Okay, let's dive in. And the topic is why the PLA Rocket Force is in trouble and how it may be related to the Americans, the CIA. The Chinese Rocket Force is the pride of the PLA and is its elite group. Whenever Beijing mentions a military takeover of Taiwan, it surely will mention or show off the rocket force. However, recently, rumor has it that the rocket force is in trouble. Its past and present commanders and deputy commanders appear to have been removed from power and are being investigated. They're suspected to have colluded with the Americans, or some of them have been suspected to have colluded. What is going on with the Chinese PLA elite troop? And how much control does Xi Jinping have over them? And also, we're going to talk about the fear of the PLA. What do they fear the most? And the ultimate question, is it likely that they are, or some of them are, in contact with the CIA? So we'll hear two experts offering their insight and analysis, and I'll offer mine at the end. So let's first talk about how the rumor came about. Rumors and news about the rocket force being in trouble has been ongoing since May. A Hong Kong newspaper, Minbao or Minpao, reported on May 24th that the past and present deputy commanders past and present commanders of the rocket force had been detained for investigation. And they are Lieutenant General Zhang Zhenzhong and Lieutenant General Liu Guangbing. I have pictures of them. Here we go. Okay, so here are the two guys. So Lieutenant General Zhang Zhenzhong was the former deputy commander of the Rocket Force, and currently he's the deputy chief. He's the deputy chief of staff of the Joint Staff Department of the Central Military Commission, and General Liu is his replacement. Right, as he move on to be the chief of staff, General Liu took over as the deputy commander of the Rocket Force. And both generals are considered the technocrat generals because of their technical background. General Zhang graduated from China's Northwestern Industrial University, and General Liu studied at the 2nd Artillery Technical College, which is now the 2nd Artillery Engineering College. He also has a master's degree in materials science and also a doctor's degree in I think it's biochemical or some type of bioengineering, but not bioscience. I think it's engineering related in bioscience or hardware. I should say hardware engineering, not biochemical or not bioscience. But anyways, so this guy on the right supposedly is super smart, and he was a straight A student when he was in college. But anyways, so that was the rumor that has been spreading since May 24th, and then on June 28th, this is in Chinese. Former PLA Navy officer who now lives in the United States, Colonel Yao Chen, who I have featured a couple of times, and you saw him in one of my recent videos. Was it last Saturday? Maybe it was last Saturday. I can't remember. There's so many videos. In one of my recent videos, I featured him. He posted on social media that this is the post in Chinese, and it says that the current commander of the Rocket Force, Liu Yuchao, was taken away by the authorities in the middle of a meeting. And he said, since March, 5 past and present commanders and deputy commanders of the Rocket Force have been removed from their positions. He said he's verifying the information. But this explosive information quickly spread. And 2 days ago, this was posted on June 28th. So 2 days ago, I think on July the 6th, Colonel Yao appeared in a Chinese TV program and gave a detailed account of how he obtained the information and quote unquote started the rumor. I found it to be interesting because we hear rumors all the time, but very rarely you see the person, the source of the rumor telling you how he came up with it, right? So I found it fascinating. So I want to share with you that. Before I play you the clip of his interview, I want to mention something that has played a big part in this story. Remember last October, around the time of the CCP's 20th Party Congress, the China Aerospace Studies Institute at the American Air University released a very detailed report about the PLA's rocket force. Oh, I had a picture. What happened to my picture? Anyways, but if you Google Air University and then China Aerospace Studies Institute, you will see the report. You could download the PDF file. It's a 240-page report. The report provides detailed information about the Rocket Force's organizational structure, chain of command, logistics bases, the names of the leadership, their relations, and so on. The Air University is an American military institute that trains and educates leaders in the air and space forces. The information in the report is so detailed that Colonel Yao doesn't believe that it's obtained through the satellite, or it cannot be obtained alone through the satellite. There has been other means. In the next video clip, he explained how his suspicion of the source of the American report started this entire discussion. Okay, so let me play you the first clip. Let me start from the very beginning. Let me make this bigger.
我当时就认为呢，这个消息吐露出来，远远绝对不是那个卫星拍到的，这是一个。第二个也不是什么基层的人员能掌握到这么详细的信息啊。但是我是认为这种情报是这个基地这一块都没办法掌握的，因为他们内部它有保密条例。所以我认为这个情报来自于火箭军的机关。但是我们不知道来自哪里，
对，
所以我一直在研究这个问题，就是前几天吧，前段时间吧，因为我一直在了解这方面情况嘛，我就跟一个过去在火箭军，他给我就披露出一个说，火箭军这个司令在开会的时候被带走。而且带走这个性质非常严重，在开会的时候带走。后来我再进一步的仔细打听，我把这个美国空军大学披露出来的关于火箭军的这个资料结合在一起，那么我又在跟他们深入的这个探讨，最后大家披露出一个这个司令的儿子在美国念书啊，这是估计是这个司令的儿子把这个事情弄出来。所以我在网上披露出来，我网上披露出来以后，同时还有一些渠道也披露了，不是我说的，也有这方面的消息。
对，
但是呢，中共你也知道，中共这个出了这种事呢，他是不会承认的，
对，
他不会公开的。但是我现在也不可能说就100%，但是我们只能说，我通过这些线索、这些推论。 我认为是这个事情还是基本靠谱的。
Okay, so that he described the entire process, how he came up with the conclusion, like, or he gave the story behind that post. So the colonel is saying that the Commander Lee's removal from the meeting is related to the release of the Rocket Force report by the Americans, and the commander's son studying in the United States might have played a role in it. That's the gist of it, right? From this clip. Another guest in the TV program, who's a political analyst, his name is Chen Po Kung. He believes that Colonel Yao's analysis is reasonable. He offered his insight and believes that another admiral is also implicated. Now, if you watched my live stream last Saturday on July 1st, I mentioned that Xi Jinping skipped an important CCP conference held once every 5 years to promote 2 admirals on June 28th, and it's very abnormal. Mr. Chen said exactly the same thing and explained Xi Jinping's expedient promotion of the 2 new admirals and how that's related to the major crisis in the rocket force. So now I'm going to play the second clip.
28号，习近平
Start from the very beginning. Li Yuchao is the name of the commander of the rocket force. I want to clarify, he got the date mixed up. So Li Yuchao was not taken away on June 28th. It was taken away 2 days before that. June 28th is the day when Colonel Yao Chen posted that he was taken away. So the date it was like Li Yuchao was taken away 2 days before these 2 new admirals were promoted. Okay, I just want to make a correction to that. He didn't get the dates right.
关键就在李玉超出事的那天，6月28号，习近平紧急提拔了2个上将。那么提上上将一般是在8·1建军节前夕正常提上将，如果不是在8·1建军节前夕，在其他什么10月、12月、9月、7月等等，都是出现了异常情况。前几年已经证明了，就不赘述。那么习近平紧急提拔2名上将，为什么紧急提拔2个上将呢？就是上将的名额，他要维持一定的人数。如果2个上将出事，就要提拔2个上将。那么就是谁出事了呢？李玉超上将，魏凤和上将出事了，那么就可能要是补齐。所以李玉超出事就涉及到魏凤和，因为这些都是魏凤和带出来的子弟兵，而魏凤和以前是位高权重啊，当过各基地的司令、火箭军司令，后来是副总参谋长，后来是国防部长。在这个每次香格里拉会上也是凶神恶煞，面部狰狞，显得好像很有斗争的味道。但是越是这样的话，背后也可能有名堂。
Okay. All right. That's explosive because he's saying that in addition to the rocket force's current commander, and the current deputy commander and former deputy commander, the former commander of the rocket force, who was also the defense minister, right, Wei Fenghe, is also under investigation. The first 3 officers are sort of easy to verify because they are active duty officers. So if we don't see them, if they have mysteriously just disappeared from the public, then we know that something has happened to them. But it would be difficult to verify Wei because he has retired and we don't see him. So it's very difficult to verify if he was indeed detained or or being investigated. the Hong Kong newspaper in the May article of the Hong Kong newspaper point out that up to this point, not many Rocket Force officers have fallen in Xi Jinping's massive anti-corruption campaign. But now suddenly, in a matter of few months, the top leadership of the PLA's elite troop is falling apart. So what is going on with the Rocket Force? Now, the Rocket Force is a little different from the other PLA troops. And now I'll give you the history later. And right now, it's a little bit out of control. Colonel Yao explained it in the next clip. Let me play his clip first.
Okay,
let me. Here we go.
火箭军非常敏感的单位。对，但是你从习近平上任以后任命的一些高级军官来看，其他的军种，你比如说陆军的吧，我跟你说，他可以用自己的亲信，但是火箭军是一个高技术的一个部队，你不可能就是把不懂导弹、不懂航天的这些人当领导，往往这些人又不是他的亲信。 这是一个因素，他对火箭军不放心，这是一个因素。第二个因素就是，中共现在要想对外作战，不仅仅是台湾，跟美国作战。对。那么唯一能拿得出手的就是火箭军，就是他的导弹。另外，你还从一个角度上看，美国对中国的海空军倒不是很在意。美国对中国的火箭军，包括海军的战略导弹、核潜艇。 这是绝对的，一丝一毫都不放松。那么，如果一打仗，我们从战争的角度来说，美国首先要把中国的火箭军，尤其是一些战略核导弹的发射井、一些部队，包括海军这个三亚的这个第二核潜艇基地，不是至少把你封锁住，或者把你打掉。所以，火箭军的这些官兵们都是，他比陆军害怕。 因为他这个美军外口手势上的打击，打到他的基地，打到他们基本上都活不了。所以火箭军的畏战情绪非常严重，比陆军、海军、空军都严重。所以他们不太愿意打仗。
Okay. So both the colonel and Mr. Chen said that the Rocket Force is the least loyal to Xi Jinping. So he talked about one is fear, and then the other thing is the loyalty issue to Xi Jinping. So now let's talk about why the Rocket Force is the least loyal to Xi Jinping. The colonel mentioned two reasons, but I kind of want to summarize it for both of them because they both talked about that. Let me give you a little history on the Rocket Force. It was formerly the Missile Force, established on July 1st, 1966 by Mao Zedong in extreme secrecy. It was given the name the Second Artillery to protect its true identity. On October 1st, 1984, the Second Artillery Corps became public for the first time during the National Day Parade on the 35th anniversary of the founding of the PRC. The Missile Force, the Rocket Force's predecessor, was considered an elite, quote unquote, at the time, high-tech PLA troop because of its more technology-oriented, like Colonel Yao pointed out. Its leaders are better educated, and many are considered the military technocrats. Like I told you, Lieutenant General Liu Guangbing has a master's degree and a doctor's degree, right, in engineering. Former Defense Minister Wei Fenghe is also considered a technocrat, and he was promoted by Hu Jintao. It was said that Xi Jinping had no choice but to use him because he had to. I mean, he cannot just only use people who are loyal to him or people he likes or trusts. He has to consider people's technical background, right? So he did not have much choice, but had to use Wei Fenghe, who was promoted by Hu Jintao, who himself is considered who is considered a technocrat, a military technocrat. Now, technocrats are technically oriented, but less politically oriented. So Xi Jinping in general doesn't trust technocrats. And this is the first reason why the Rocket Force isn't loyal to Xi Jinping, or why Xi Jinping does not trust them, right? It's mutual. The lack of trust is mutual. And the second reason has to do with Xi Jinping's relations with the princelings. When Mao Zedong and his lieutenants created the PLA's elite troop, the 2nd Artillery Corps, they gave it to their most loyal PLA officers to manage. Who were they? Their children, the Red Princelings. Therefore, the Rocket Force is traditionally a stronghold of the princelings. When Xi Jinping upgraded the 2nd Artillery Corps to become the 4th branch of the PLA, the Rocket Force, in December 2015, then political commissar of the Rocket Force, or the 2nd Artillery Corps, was Admiral Zhang Haiyang, who is a princeling heavyweight in the PLA, because his father is also a one of the founding marshals of the PRC. So him and his father was considered the first pair of father-son admirals, the first pair of admirals who are father and son. So he's a very influential figure in the PLA and also among the princelings. Xi Jinping got rid of him when he renamed the troop to Rocket Force. His removal Zhang retired. It was not like removal from the meeting, but basically, he did not want to use him. But that change of leadership was not very well received, and Xi Jinping's successive crackdowns on princelings in PLA, most recently the arrest of Liu Yazhou, right, which I talked about before. So his successive crackdowns on princelings within the PLA, some of whom have supported him in the early years of his rule, is the second reason why the Rocket Force isn't loyal to him, because the Rocket Force was developed based on princeling support, and it's like their home base. And when Xi Jinping isn't friendly to the princelings, that makes this PLA unit, not loyal to him. And the third reason, which is the most important reason, you've already heard, is the fear of war. Both Colonel Yao and Mr. Chen talked about it. And this fear is the motivation for the PLAs to be in contact with foreign intelligence agency. And the Rocket Force isn't alone in fearing war. The PLA Navy is also in fear. And so let me play you the next clip. And this is the clip from Mr. Chen. I lost track. Is this? Oh yeah, this is the one. Hold on. Start from the very beginning. Okay, here we go.
他们压力很大，还有潜艇部队就说压力很大，将近30%患有精神病患，又长期在水下憋着，随时要打仗，一打仗潜艇要报销，所以据说是潜艇军跟这个火箭军压力非常大，都处于恐惧感，特别一提到伪军啊，一个个都魂飞魄散。说这些人呢，就极可能啊，为了留后路啊，跟美国方面有沟通，说。而美方倒过来对这方面也是非常下功夫的，因为美方的情报工作是 全世界铺开。那么对中国来说，重要下功夫的中国的高精尖产品，就是什么战略支援部队啊、火箭军啊、天空军啊、太空军、导弹等等。说里面有人要出来，而美国要下功夫，这两相的呼应啊。所以就我认为呢，第三种可能性是最大，就是说跟美国沟通了，那么表面上对美国很凶，对给习近平撑台子，但是基本上这些军头都在跟美国各方面的联系。
Okay, so both of them mentioned that the Chinese Navy, right, in addition to the rocket force, the Chinese Navy, the submarine corps, also do not or does not want to have a war. And this reminds me of a Navy corruption case a few years ago, that's related to selling confidential information to the CIA. So in 2019, Sun Bo, the general manager of China Shipping, it's called China Shipbuilding Industry Corp, which is the company that builds China's carrier, like aircraft carriers and also the warships. So the general manager of that company, it's called CSIC. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison on economic charges. The Russian satellite news agency reported that at the time that Sun, he was actually tried for selling confidential information of the Liaoning carrier to the CIA. And some Chinese media also reported it. And since the Shandong carrier was modeled after the Liaoning is a refurbished Russian carrier or the Ukrainian carrier. And then the Shandong was the first carrier that the Chinese built on their own. So because the Shandong was modeled after the Liaoning, people suspect that the Americans have also obtained the specifications of the Shandong carrier as well. And in 2020, Hu Wenming, the chairman of CSIC, the China Shipbuilding Industry Corp, was removed from power. His case entered legal proceedings in 2021, but behind closed doors because we do not hear about it. So Chen believes that Xi Jinping didn't arrest these individuals for economic crimes, but for colluding with foreign intelligence agencies such as the CIA. He thinks the American military, the report, the Rocket Force report released by the American Military Academy around the time of the Party Congress last fall, the Americans released that report at that time in order to deter the CCP and the PLA. But this report has alarmed Xi Jinping, who then ordered an investigation, and the investigation proved to be productive and eventful. So what do I think? Well, I think both experts' assessment is fairly is fairly in line with my understanding, because we don't know. I mean, it's very hard to prove these things. We can only use our judgment or, like line them up to see if they're logical, right? I think Xi Jinping's recent speech and his recent speech and his one policy that the PLA issued recently support these two experts' conclusions. What are their conclusions? The conclusions are: one, the PLA fears war, or at least the Rocket Force and the submarine corps fear the war. And the second conclusion is that some have colluded with foreign intelligence agencies, possibly through their families and friends. Why do I say Xi Jinping's recent speech and policy supported their conclusions? Well, on July 6th, Xi Jinping visited the Eastern Theater and gave a speech. His speech was published by state media. If you read, it has like 300 words. I mean, his speech may be longer than that, but the state media summarized his speech in a 300-word a report. But if you read it, it basically can be summarized as follow my order and not be afraid to fight. Basically, that's what he said. It sounds like the PLA isn't following his order and are afraid of war, or he wouldn't need to remind them. Why would he give a speech that basically said, follow my order and dare to fight or not be afraid to fight, right? I mean, it spells out the problem. So that makes me think that the PLA, he does have loyalty issues within the PLA, and then they are fearful of war. And the second thing that tells me their assessment is accurate is the PLA's recent policy that requires monitoring of social relations. I talked about this before, I think also last week in my live streams, one of my live streams. The PLA has a new requirement to monitor the social relations of PLA officers. There's no details about what levels of officers they'll monitor, but it sounds like the social relations includes families and friends. That tells me, why do they issue this policy? That tells me there's an indication that these friends and family have played a role that's detrimental to the PLA. That tells me that some families and friends are the conduit between these PLA officers and, let's say, CIA, right? Otherwise, why would they? Because this is unprecedented. Even during Mao's era, Mao has never ordered some kind of a surveillance or monitoring system to control every officer's family and friends, or keep track of the family and friends. There's nothing like that. And this is the first time. So that tells people something has gone wrong. If it's not wrong, they wouldn't issue this policy. So in a dictatorship system, on the surface, everyone is obedient and loyal and shouting slogans all day long, showing their loyalty to Xi Jinping. But people are by no means submissive. Xi Jinping has no idea how many people in the PLA have been secretly in touch with the United States or Taiwan, and Taiwan. And he has no idea at all. So from this point of view, I think Xi Jinping has no confidence in the PLA if a war breaks out. And I think he's really worried. Okay, that concludes my presentation. I think it's entertainment for Saturday night, isn't it? All right, let's see if people have questions for me. I provided the link of the original video. I think I showed you the highlight. I think the most insightful part, and the original talk was quite long, was half hour. So those of you who speak Chinese, you can watch that entire program. Let me see if people have questions for me. All right. If you have questions, put my name in the front so I know it's addressed to me. Max Schroeder, hi Lei, what's the best performing inland province in terms of economics? Is it true that Henan is lagging behind because of it's an agriculture province? Why is Hunan or Henan? Why is Hunan successful? Yeah, Henan is traditionally not. It has so many problems, right? It has a flooding, and it has the village banks. It's not an affluent province. Why is Hunan successful? I think at this point it's hard to say who is successful. I mean, Shanghai, Guangzhou. Shanghai is the most successful city. I mean, it's a city, but it's run like a province, but it's not doing so well. So I can't really say that anyone is successful at this point. But the question you ask is why there are some provinces affluent versus the other ones. Usually the provinces on the coast is more open, because they have a history, they have a tradition of being in commerce or in trade. Like Guangzhou Canton, it has been a town, a city of international trade for centuries. So they have that tradition and history. Same as Shanghai, right? So some of the localities have the tradition of being in international business and is more open, whereas some of the other regions used to be a resource-driven province, like the main industry, like the Northeast used to be the most industrialized provinces in China, or one of the most industrialized provinces in the 50s. But unfortunately, due to bad policies, it's just not doing very well. It's the reason is very complex. That requires a whole video in itself, but I don't know how many people are actually interested in that. Every time I make a video about, the very detailed information about the specifics, I think there aren't, it's a group of people are interested, but the general public isn't very interested. So let me see. Questions from Alejandro Sudiro. Like, are the PLA generals subject to protection and surveillance by the CCP Central Security Bureau? No. I mean, they have their own protection. I mean, they're in the military, so they have their own bodyguards within the PLAs set up. So they have people working for them, under them. They're not the subject of protection for the Central Security Bureau. I do not think so. All right, from Mitsu, will you be covering Russia dumping 4.5 billion worth of yuan for dollars in the future show? Yeah, I thought people already know this. So the reason that the renminbi declined, devalued so much, is because, countries like Argentina, Russia, they agreed to trade with China. They agreed to accept renminbi in trade, but these countries are not. They're smart because they don't want to hold on to renminbi, and also their currencies have devalued so much, right? So they when they agree, they have sort of an agreement with China that their exchange rate is fixed at certain rate, in this deal of accepting renminbi as part of the trade. So they have a fixed exchange rate between, let's say, Russia and China, or Argentina and China. So they get a deal when they got the renminbi, and then they just sell them. They're not interested in holding on to the renminbi. They just sell them in the offshore market, and that drove down the price. I mean, the exchange rate in the offshore market, and then the offshore market, and then the onshore market rates cannot be that far off, right? So if one goes down, the other goes down. So China is actually paying the price of renminbi globalization. As China, or as the CCP pushes renminbi into international trade, it inadvertently devalued its currency, because people are not interested in holding on its value. They're selling it as soon as they get the renminbi. All right, from David Lopan, thank you for your presentation and hard work. Oh, I thank you. Thank you for joining me. From Michael, am I pronouncing right? Henault? Does the ghost of Lin Biao play a role? Does the ghost of Lin Biao? Yeah, Lin Biao is the second in command after Mao Zedong. He's the second highest ranking military general under Mao. And somebody said the second in command always turn into a rebel. Like that's the case for Lin Biao, right? Who who fled to Russia, and his jet was shot down, or his airplane was shot down. And they said that the second in command um, for the Hitler during the Nazis era, he was whatever his name, I forgot. Hess, is that his name? Hess also turned against Hitler. So, like the second in command in the military in a totalitarian regime or under a dictator has the highest risk of turning against the dictator. All right, from Yoming, thank you for the donation. Thank you. From Formosan business support. Oh, thank you. That's Taiwan dollar. I love it. Thank you. All right. GXP, how are local governments dealing with their debts? I'm answering that question. I was going to make one video about China's economy. It turns into 2, and now it grows into 3. So it's I'm writing scripts for 3 videos on the Chinese economy. The first will be about I'm looking at the chronic conditions versus acute diseases. I said that some of the China's economic problems are the chronic conditions like low domestic consumption and high employment rate. That's chronic conditions. And then acute diseases or acute attack is the debt, the local government debt, and then the crumbling banking system is like the acute attacks. So I'm writing scripts to discuss that. It should come out in a week or so, if I have more time. All right. From David Lopan, thank you for the donation. Alan Mandel, do you feel CCP's social media activities in the U.S. tech and cyber warfare are unimpeded and could damage U.S. society as much as war? Yes, and I think we should ban TikTok immediately. We should ban TikTok and WeChat. If anything, just stop that as soon as possible. I don't understand why they're not banned. So, all right. Matthew Dolman, highly every Chinese organization that I have ever worked with seems to be so chaotic and unorganized. Yet they have these modern complex cities that seem to run well. Can you explain this paradox? Where do you see the modern complex cities that seem to run well? I do not see them. Are you saying that you've seen modern Chinese cities that are complex and that are run well? Well, I think Shanghai and Beijing are probably the best organized Chinese cities, modern Chinese cities. But the problems are hidden, right? So whenever, like during the Olympics, certain populations are evicted from their homes because they are not welcomed in the city when so many foreigners are here. That's uniquely Chinese. Do you consider that's modern city running well? I do not think so. No modern city, no well-run modern city would evict their citizens like that to accommodate an international event. But that's common in Chinese cities. And no cities would experience the kind of lockdowns that Shanghai did. And it happened. So I don't think there's any modern Chinese cities that are run well. So it's consistent. I do not see any paradox. It's consistent with the chaotic Chinese organizations that you've seen. The reason you don't see the chaos for the city is because it's being covered up. No media talk about it. Chinese people are afraid to say anything, and even if they do, they're being deleted on social media. And as non-Chinese speaking populations, we don't have the language advantage, so we don't even know when these chaos happen. And so we don't see. So we've assumed they're well organized or well run. Okay. From Jeff Ramos, don't be afraid to fight. Don't be afraid to fight. Meanwhile, the plan for Mao is to lure other army and drop nukes on China. Yeah, don't be afraid. Yeah. Well, I think he said, "Don't be afraid." Don't be afraid is to tell is because they are afraid. They are seriously afraid. Um, and I think because Chinese is even if, let's say, we compare the Chinese military servicemen with like an American military serviceman, the Chinese is more fearful because they grew up in that kind of environment. Like the part of the CCP's rule is based on fear, so they instill this fear in you, right? It's the organization, the country is run based on fear, so fear is a natural feeling of these PLA. So when CCP instills so much fear in these people, they're going to fear about everything, right? I mean, if you're a normal person, if you're a normal human being, you would naturally fear when you live in that kind of environment. Um, so, so, and they don't necessarily feel the honor of fighting for their country. So they have, yeah. So their degree of fear is a lot more severe than the military personnel in the West. From Aja. Oh, thank you for the generous donation. How is it always so sunny at night where you are? What time zone are you in? Also, thanks for all the great work. So sunny? You think I have so many lights around me? People tell me that I need to turn on lights, so it's not sunny. I'm on the East Coast. For more some business support. Thank you, Lei, for the insights. What exactly is the PLA? What exactly is the PLA? People's Liberations Army. Yeah. Legal speaking, they are something like the SS of the former Hitler's party. 40% funding from the PRC government and 60% are different groups of firms. Really? Okay, I learned something. Thank you. Thank you. From Fro Featherstone. Fro Featherstone. Surely the CCP knows how incompetent and corrupt the American military is. If all the armies knew the truth about each other, they could all have a good laugh and go play some golf. Well, that's the Chinese don't know how to play golf. The Chinese soldiers don't have the luxury of playing golf. So, and have a good laugh, that's for people living in the free society who have a sense of humor. I don't know if the Chinese servicemen have the luxury of really to be able to laugh in that scenario you described. For people living in the West, yes, we will laugh. It's like, okay, we're not that different from each other. We fear each other and we're the same. We would laugh, but for the Chinese PLA soldiers, they are not able to laugh. They have lost the ability to laugh in that scenario. And that's something only people who have lived in China understand. All right, well, from Brian Cobb, please consider a video on U.S. Secretary of Treasury Yellen's trip to China. What are your thoughts regarding current U.S. policy towards China? Well, the Chinese went viral on the restaurant she picked to eat in Beijing. I think the Chinese offered to take her out, like, give her a proper official dinner, probably a fancy dinner in the hall of the people or in some kind of a fancy palace like the one they treated Elon Musk. But I think she declined. Instead, she took her team and went out to eat in a restaurant outside the U.S. Embassy. And she didn't even book a private room. She just ate in the dining room. And that shocked the Chinese. I think this is intentional. So whatever she ordered, the dishes she ordered became popular. And I saw like advertisement from the restaurant or from other restaurants that posted that promoted the dishes that she ordered. Yeah, and then those of you who speak Chinese would appreciate this joke. And one of the dishes that she ordered is called 先君子后小人. In Chinese, it literally means, what do you mean? I'm gonna play the bad cop before I play the good cop. It's the good cop, bad cop game. So it literally means that. So bad cop first before I become good cop. So people saying, well, maybe that's the game. That's the American game, right? Play tough first, and then be sweet. So I don't know, but that's the Chinese interpretation of the food, of why an American minister will want to eat in such open dining room. Maybe it's her way of letting the Chinese know what dishes she ordered, and through the name of the dishes she sends a message. I really doubt it. I don't think Janet Yellen is, I don't think they're that calculating in sending out this message to the Chinese. I think she just probably loves the food. But that's how some of the Chinese interpreted. All right. Okay. Wow, there are a lot of questions. And then from Dave Johnson, Lei, if you were elected president of China, what would be the first thing you would change? Wow, I've never thought of that. I never thought that if I would be elected the president of China, what would the first thing I would change? I think when that happens, if I'm elected, I think CCP is already history. Because I don't imagine how I can be elected when CCP is still around. So if right, so if CCP is around, then there's no election. So I would assume the CCP is already history. What would be the first thing I would do? Can I think about this? This is really a profound question that I have not thought about before, but I will get back to you on that, maybe at the next live stream. From Kong Yan Chang, do you think it's fair the Chinese people who work so hard for American easily printing cash? I'm not quite sure if I get the question. Is it fair the Chinese people work so hard for American easily? The Chinese people don't have to work so hard if the Chinese government can consider its people more than itself. The Chinese people are suffering not because of the Americans' bad policies, but because of the CCP's bad policies for decades. So I would look at it that way. Thank you, Robert. Okay, I'll take one more question and that's it. Let's see. Is that all? Okay, from Max Schroeder. Why are Chinese such bad warriors compared to Mongolians, Vietnamese, and Japanese folks? Historically, China lost most of its wars, even to weaker countries like Mongolia. Good question. Well, the Chinese, the Chinese culture, the most powerful, yes, I think Chinese is not a physical ethnic group. They pride themselves. They're proud of their mental power. The Chinese culture put emphasis on the invisible, the intangible. They do not, or we do not. Should I say we or they? We do not emphasize on the visible and the tangible. So, and that's a very, very important feature of the Chinese culture. So we think that, let me give you an example. The Chinese are strong on strategy, on tactics, but they're not very good at, real combat strategy. They're not very good at fighting on the battlefield. because they're not physical group of people, but they're highly speculative. Let me give you an example. There's a very famous story, Zhuge Liang. Zhuge Liang is the smartest strategist that China ever had, right? And so there was a story about during war, there's another country, they came to attack his city, and his troops the city was empty without any troops. They're all gone. So what he has is basically women and children in the city, and the enemies are coming to attack him, to take over the city. And so it was a very dire situation. So what did he do? He sat on how in ancient China there's like the city wall, not war. The city wall is like, I don't know, 10 feet wide. It's like a fortress, I should say, the fortress. So he asked his subordinates to put a Chinese instrument, the zither, the Chinese zither, on the fortress, on top of the city wall. And he started playing the zither. And when the enemy troops approached, were basically, the city was under siege. They were right at the gate. And then the commander of the enemy said, stop. He stopped the troop and started listening to Zhuge Liang playing the instrument. And as he listened to the music, he concluded that, he said, you know what, we'd better leave. He said, if you listen to his music, he's so peaceful and so calm. I do not see any sense of anxiety in his music. He's utterly prepared, and I do not want to risk my life. We'd better retreat. And so they left. So this means one man's strong mental strength defeated a whole army. And those are the type of stories that the Chinese are very proud of. It's their inner strength that they think is truly invincible. So you're right. The Chinese are not physical. They're not physical. They're not good at physical battles, but they're very strong here. At least that's the traditional Chinese culture. Now the CCP, Mao said he's the combination of Karl Marx and an old Chinese emperor. So he has kind of borrowed some of the things, features of Chinese culture, and combined it with this deadly foreign, with the deadly communism. So they can be very tough to deal with. All right, that's a long answer to that question. I think I'd better from Jeff Ramos, any news network that you recommend for us English and Romance language speakers? You mean the English programs or Chinese programs? If it's Chinese program, the channel that check out the program that I set as that I put as a reference in this program. That program has very good insight on Chinese CCP politics, but it's in Chinese language, and they do have some of the best political analysis about China. So if you read Chinese, or if you understand Chinese, it's a good channel to follow. But for English program, I'm not so sure. My channel? You should subscribe if you haven't. Okay. All right. All right. That's all for tonight. I thank you very much for joining me. Stay well. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.